As far as genderqueer, I've got a son in the high school as well. And this is bull. We know it, all right? We do not need to be having literature that's showing boys how to suck.
What would you do if your 11-year-old child brought home a book so explicit, so inappropriate, that it made your stomach turn? Would you confront the school board? Would you demand answers? Or would you be left wondering how on earth such content ended up in your child's hands in the first place? This is the story of Knox Zajac, a brave 6th grader from Windham, Maine, who did just that. But what he exposed isn't just a one-off incident. It's part of a much larger, more troubling trend that's sweeping through our education system. On a cold February evening in 2023, Knox Zajac and his father walked into the Windham Raymond School District Board meeting. They weren't there for a typical parent-teacher discussion or to raise concerns about grades or behavior. No, they were there to expose something far more disturbing, a book that Knox found in his middle school library. The book? Nick and Charlie by Alice Oseman. The content? Graphic, explicit, and deeply inappropriate for an 11-year-old child. For those unfamiliar, Nick and Charlie is a novella by British author Alice Oseman. It's a spin-off from her popular Heartstopper series and focuses on the relationship between two teenage boys. But this isn't just a simple coming-of-age story. The novella includes scenes of sexual experimentation, alcohol consumption, and other mature themes. And yet this book was sitting on the shelves of a middle school library, easily accessible to children as young as 11. The age advisory for this book is 14 years and older.
My back over my hips as I ask if we should take our clothes off, and he's saying yes before I finish my sentence. He's pulling off my t-shirt, laughing when I can't undo his shirt buttons. He's undoing my belt. I'm reaching into his bedside drawer for a condom. We're kissing. Again, we're rolling over. Obviously, you can see where this is going. I don't know if it's because we're feeling especially emotional or just tired, or these past couple of weeks have been too much. But this reminds me so much of the first time we had sex. We were both fucking terrified, and the whole thing was kind of terrible because we didn't know what we were doing. But it was good too, so good.
That's right. An 11-year-old boy stood in front of a room full of adults and read aloud from a book that contained sexually explicit content. You could hear a pin drop in that room as the reality of what Knox was saying sank in. But this wasn't just a moment of shock, it was a wake-up call. Knox's discovery of this book wasn't by accident. It was at the entry door on the stand at his school's library when he came across Nick and Charlie. As he decided to check it out, what he found inside left him feeling uncomfortable and confused. And when he brought the book home and showed it to his father, Adam Zajac, the reaction was immediate and fierce.
This is the smut that he is finding, all right? I don't care whether it's gay, straight, bisexual, whatever the terms are for all this stuff. Doesn't need to be at our school. Doesn't need to be at my 11-year-old's library.
But it wasn't just the content of the book that shocked Adam. When Knox returned the book to the librarian, she didn't express concern or even a hint of hesitation. Instead, she asked him if he wanted more, a graphic novel version, no less.
Now, this book was at my middle school, and it was on a stand. When I rented it out to show my dad it, the librarian asked if I wanted more and if I wanted a graphic novel version.
What we're seeing here is a broader trend in education, where the push for diversity, equity, and inclusion content may not be age-appropriate. This isn't just about one book in one school. It's about a systemic issue, a failure of the educational system to set appropriate boundaries. Under the influence of woke culture, schools across the country include materials that push the envelope, sometimes far beyond what's suitable for young minds. This incident with Knox Zajac is not an isolated case. Across the United States, parents are finding themselves in similar situations, discovering that books with graphic sexual content are being made available to their children without their knowledge or consent. The result? A growing backlash from parents and communities who feel that the education system is overstepping its bounds. In the weeks following Knox's confrontation with the school board, the story spread like wildfire. Media outlets picked it up, social media erupted with debates, and parents across the country began asking themselves, "What is my child reading at school?" But what's even more troubling is the school's response, or rather, the lack of one. The Windham Raymond School District, like many others, chose silence over accountability. No public apology, no explanation, just silence. This, too, is part of the problem. Schools are increasingly operating under a veil of secrecy when it comes to what they're teaching and what materials they're providing to students.
You may think that schools know the best for our children. You know who know the best for our children? The parents.
Adam also blasted another controversial book, Genderqueer, which also contains sexually explicit depictions of 2 minors. The age advisory in the book is for readers 18 years and older.
And then, as far as genderqueer, I've got a son in the high school as well. And this is bull. We know it, all right? We do not need to be having literature that's showing boys how to suck, all right? I'm very, very frustrated about it, okay?
And he's absolutely right. Parents should have a say in what their children are exposed to, especially when it comes to content as sensitive and potentially damaging as what was found in Nick and Charlie and Genderqueer.
A state lawmaker from Virginia Beach is suing Barnes & Noble over books he says are too obscene for minors. Delegate Tim Anderson also wants Virginia Beach City public school leaders
and Chesapeake public schools removed from libraries.
In 2022, Virginia lawmakers wanted Barnes & Noble to ban Genderqueer from selling to kids as the book depicts obscene content. Parents and lawmakers from at least 11 U.S. states have also demanded that the book be removed from school libraries. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin signed a law requiring school boards to inform parents of when books used in their kids' classrooms contain sexually explicit content. According to a 2022 poll by Rasmussen Reports, voters overwhelmingly oppose sexually explicit books in public school libraries. 69% of voters believe books containing explicit sexual depictions of sex acts should not be present in public high school libraries. The poll also found that 89% of possible U.S. voters think that public schools must inform parents about what contents are being taught to their children at schools. So what's really going on here? Why are books like this finding their way into school libraries? The answer lies in the broader influence of woke culture, a movement that, while rooted in the desire for social justice and inclusivity, has taken a turn toward the extreme. A Michigan school district in 2022 had to remove a couple of its sexually explicit books in response to parents' protests. These included Push by Sapphire, telling a story of a girl sexually abused by her father, and Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston, a sexually explicit LGBT romance story. In 2022, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law called the Parental Rights in Education Bill. This law bans teaching about sexual orientation to students from kindergarten to 3rd grade and restricts any content that isn't suitable for their age.
So this is trying to sow doubt about kids, about their gender identity. It's trying to say that, they could be whatever they want to be. This is inappropriate.
Some people have criticized the law, calling it anti-LGBTQ and nicknaming it the Don't Say Gay bill, even though the word gay is not actually mentioned in the law's text. Woke culture, at its core, is about awareness of social inequalities, systemic racism, gender discrimination, and other forms of injustice. It's about challenging the status quo and pushing for a more inclusive, equitable society. On the surface, these goals are noble, but in practice, especially within the education system, the push for inclusivity has sometimes crossed into overreach. In schools, this has translated into a curriculum and a library selection that prioritizes diversity and representation, often at the expense of age appropriateness. Books that deal with complex themes like sexuality, gender identity, and systemic oppression are being introduced to students at younger and younger ages. The outcome of these is often confusion, discomfort, and in cases like Knox Zajak's, outright harm. A lot of parents just don't know what's going on in the school, Adam Zajac told the Maine Wire. What I don't understand is how we have books in the middle school library that adults would be fired for having at work or potentially prosecuted for sharing with children given their pornographic content. It's smut, really. What we're seeing is a shift from education to indoctrination. The focus is no longer just on reading, writing, and arithmetic, but on shaping the worldview of young students, sometimes in ways that parents might not agree with or even be aware of. It's a form of social engineering that's being done under the radar, and it's causing a lot of concern. State and federal laws ban the possession or distribution of child pornography, though there's some uncertainty when it comes to cartoon images. In Maine, it's illegal to distribute obscene material to minors, but there's an exception if the material is given to children at school. Hosseinzadeh's experience isn't just a cautionary tale, it's a reflection of a much larger issue. The increasing presence of woke ideology in schools is leading to significant changes in what children are taught and exposed to. For some, these changes are seen as progress, an essential step towards creating a more inclusive and understanding society. But for many others, like the Zajac family, it represents a dangerous shift away from the core principles of education and towards something far more concerning. This story is just one of many. Across the country, parents are discovering that the books, lessons, and materials being presented to their children are more aligned with an agenda than with educational value. The stakes are high and the lines are drawn. The Hosseinzadeh incident is a stark reminder of what's at stake. This isn't just about one book or one school. This is about the kind of society we want to build and the kind of education we want to provide for the next generation. Are we going to stand by and allow our schools to become vehicles for ideological agendas? Or are we going to take a stand, demand accountability, and ensure that our children's education remains focused on what truly matters?